All right, guys, here we are for part number 2 of today's lesson. Question: what is it that we worship? Think about that. What do you worship? We all worship something. For some people it's money, for some it's fame, for some it's good looks. I used to be a competitive power lifter, and the bodybuilders were always working out in the same area that we were, and we used to just get on them like crazy, because they're, they say, "Hey, we want to look pretty." And I said, "We just want to be strong." And so what we were doing was seeing how much weight we could lift. They were seeing how big and perfect they could get to their muscles and how little their body fat could be. And what were they worshiping? An ideal that doesn't exist? Maybe. Maybe themselves. The funny part for me is I won quite a few trophies. They mean nothing to me. I've got one that stands about that tall. It's about 3.5, 4 feet tall. It was the last competition I was ever in, and I won it. Well, I won my class anyway, and it was called the Legends of Powerlifting Invitational. It was invitational only, and I did very well. And they handed me this huge trophy, and I thought, what the heck am I going to do with that? Well, I think it's sitting in the corner of a closet somewhere. I don't know. I haven't seen it in years. But I know people who put every little thing they've ever earned out for everyone to see. I knew a guy one time, he had, in his office, he had one wall from floor to ceiling with nothing but award certificates and pictures of him with important people, I guess. It was absolutely covered. There was no room for anything else. What was he worshiping? To a certain extent, he was worshiping himself. But he was worshiping an image of himself that he knew was not real. You can worship anything. Obviously I'm not on the boat. I love boats. I've always loved boats. I grew up on boats. And every summer we charter a bigger boat out of Anacortes and go out through the San Juan Islands and the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the Gulf Islands and so on. Does that mean I worship the boat? No, it doesn't. It's a thing. It's an object. But when our objects become more valuable than they have a right to be, they become something that we worship. Well, like I said, for some it's money. I don't know why I never caught that bug, but I didn't. For others, it's a bright red Ferrari. Or you see some of these big yachts out there. I've seen them come in, 120 feet long, brand new, probably cost about $20 million. And I'm thinking, I got here just the same as you did. You got a bigger boat, but so what? And it depends on how much all of this means to you. Now, there are places in the world where people still worship rocks. Yeah. If you've been to Hawaii, if you've been to the Big Island, the Kilauea crater, I've been there. And when we were there, one of the times we were walking around the rim, and there were offerings to the goddess Pele. There were flowers, there was fruit, and there was a bottle of rum. Well, apparently Pele likes fruit, flowers, and rum. But in the ancient Hawaiian traditions, this was the goddess of fire, the goddess of the volcano. In other places, there's another place on the Big Island where you call the Valley of the Temples. And there are some, it's actually a huge, huge cemetery built into a valley and up on the sides. And there is a very, very, very large Buddhist temple there with it's probably 15-foot tall bronze image of Buddha. And you can see there are monks, Buddhist monks who live there, and all day long there's some attending to this image. Now, are they worshiping that piece of bronze? Or are they worshiping what it represents? And you can have anything represent anything. Seriously, when I ask you to think back on a childhood memory of a smell that comes to you, and you just go, oh yeah, what's it bring back? It brings back something pretty pleasant. For me, it was Mom's homemade bread every Saturday. From scratch, she baked bread. And oh my goodness gracious, we couldn't wait to get into it. But we didn't worship the bread. But it brings back memories. We have value in that. Where things get a little cattywampus is when we put too much value on something. Such as people who have millions and billions of dollars and don't have enough. Too much and not enough. Because there's never enough. Because what they're doing is they're putting their soul into something that cannot reciprocate, it cannot give back. The art of creating worship space is to eliminate all of that stuff. Not make it fancy, but to make it plain. Why? They're distractions. I mentioned bibliolatry, the worship of the Bible. Well, the Bible is 66 books, written over a course of about 3,500 years. And it has a lot of good stuff in it. And I know people who worship the Bible. They won't admit it, they won't say it, but they spend all their time reading the Bible and trying to figure out what does this mean? Oh, this is so amazing. And they never pay attention to the God it's pointing them towards. So I think the job of the worship leader, the art of worship, creating that sacred space, is to eliminate as much distraction as you can. Which is why when I go to my church on Sunday mornings, well, not recently, obviously, the band's up there playing, there's strobe lights, there's neon lights, there's this, that, and the other thing. And come on, guys. Really? We're missing what it's about. How many of your churches are missing what it's all about? You heard the sacred music, the ancient sacred music was designed to pull you in, to bring you into a certain emotional state, to where you were worshiping God. It did a very good job. If you really listen to it, it would pull you in, it would calm you down, it would say, this space is sacred. I have a hard time, now maybe it's just me, could be. I have a hard time with basically hard rock in church, people jumping up and down and, whatever. But that's just not my style either. But the question is it a feel-good thing? Or is it worship? There's a big difference. I like to feel good. Don't you? Of course you do. There's a big, big difference. So I want you to think about it a little bit. How would you create sacred space in your church? When I was, I got fired from my very first job in ministry. I did. Way back, I'd just gotten out of college, and the church I grew up with well, the one I described was very boring, hired me as the youth pastor. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be cool. This is fun. So I started working with the high school kids, and we went on a camping trip. Took them on a camping trip. Actually, I took them on a couple. Went to an amusement park in Ohio called Cedar Point. But on one of them, we went up into the northern woods in Michigan alongside a very rapid river, and it was just gorgeous. And we had an incredible time. And on that Sunday morning, we had a worship service out there in the trees. And but it wasn't too long after that the chairman of the board came to me and says, "Daryl, I need your resignation, or I'm going to have to fire you." And why, Dad? Yeah, my dad was chairman of the board. I couldn't get away with anything. And he says, "Well, you had those kids out on a weekend and they should have been in church." I said, "You knew about it ahead of time." I said, "Besides that, we were in church. We were in God's church, not this. We're in the church that God created." Well, he couldn't argue with that one very well. "Well, you're telling kids that drugs are okay." I said, whoa. Now, wait a minute. Never did I say that. "Well, so-and-so says that his daughter came to you and asked you if she had tried marijuana, was she going to go to hell?" And you said, "No." I said, "That's correct." I said, "No." And I'll continue to say that. Because even if it is a sin, it is forgivable. "Well, it's all through the church that you're promoting drugs, so I'm going to have to fire you." I said, "Cool, I'm done." And I left that church. But what was it? What's the difference? We were outside. We were in God's cathedral, worshiping, rather than being in this boxed up church with a bunch of stuffy people. So really, if you could create worship, now forget about the box of where it's supposed to take place. If you could create worship, what would it look like? Think about that one. We're going to come back to this. Okay? All right. Hey, pick up your books. We got to get going on this. Thanks, guys.